help them fit in with the boomers and the Xers on the team? Because this is all about the social, right? It's not about the ladder climbing to millennials at all. Entirely different motivational structure. How do you help the generations pull together and promote generational diversity on your team? So I really do want you to give that some thought and some specific thoughtful consideration. So I'd like to ask you, what are the generations represented on your team? You answered which generation you are, but how about on your team? Which is the majority? Which is the majority of the generation represented on your team? And so, Karen, can I ask you to put up the third and final poll question?
Absolutely. And our listeners can view it now.
Okay.
Okay, so the race is on, Brenda. They're answering.
Okay.
Oh, this is going to be some interesting results.
Yeah.
Okay, again, we have no builders and no Gen Z.
Okay.
I'm going to give them a few more seconds because we're up to just about 72%. So I'll give them a few more seconds to finish their selection.
Okay.
Yeah, we're about up to 8. Yep, they're still answering this. They're still pretty active in there. It's really fascinating. It's really fascinating, the differences and some similarities, but differences as well.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has their value. Everybody brings it to the table, right?
Yeah. Okay, oh, yeah. Shared experiences.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got 84% have voted. So we will close the poll. Okay, and we have 9% baby boomers.
Did you say 9?
Yes.
9%, okay.
Yep. And 67% are Gen X.
Uh-huh.
With 23% Gen Y.
Okay. Okay. So interesting mix, isn't it, right? And so, and that certainly makes sense, right? With Gen X, so the 35 to 50-year-olds, that's prime time. But the Gen Y are certainly gaining, the 15 to 34-year-olds, right, gaining in your team. And we're certainly working in professional jobs, so this isn't like your part-time after-school job, right? These are professional jobs. And so those ranks, the Gen Ys are certainly going to be, you're definitely going to want to be attracting them, right? Because you can see with only 9% of the boomers, that's a lot of shift left that's already happened in retirement. So, okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm going to encourage us all. Let's laugh a little bit about this as well, right? It's fun to laugh at ourselves as well. The boomers used to get teased a lot with our millennials and Gen Ys on my team. They joked the guys about, the older boomers with those plastic pen protectors, the pocket plastic pen protectors that they thought was the most nerdiest. That we just never seem to be like, we think we're hip, and we were not hip at all, according to the millennials, right? We didn't know that when you wear a belt, and you can have a different buckle on the belt. They don't all just come together. The bifocals that are starting to enter the workplace now, right? So we laugh about each other. They can't see far, can't see when you go out to lunch, can't see the menu, right? Boomers certainly laugh at one another. I know that Gen X has their own set of humor, and so here's a little funny with Gen Y as well. And you might hear your own self or your colleagues and you like, why are they called Y? Why should I get a job? Why should I leave home? Why should I wash and iron my own clothes? And then a cartoonist added his answer to that as well. So you know what? It's cool stuff, but we can laugh about it too. So, and I do encourage you to just find the funny things as well. Okay, so some of the generational traits. Let's talk just a bit about the builders. They were born at the time of the Great Depression, come out of the Great Depression and World War II, right? That has just finished. The GI Bill, they're very cash-based, respect authority, very disciplined and dedicated, known for their hard work and reliability, honors a big deal. They worked for one company. That was their career, right? The the gold watch, 20-year gold watch joke, right? That it was for real. Tom Brokaw called the World War II greatest generation, and they were right behind it, right? The builders were right behind that generation. So that's that whole mold that's driving that generation. The boomers lived through Vietnam, civil rights, with the Cold War, and the start of women's lib, with the JFK and Martin Luther King assassinations, and wanting equality. The whole 80s, crazy materialness of the 80s, and the credit. You got a credit card, and you got a bunch of credit cards, and you maxed them all out. And TV really got big, and the whole fitness thing, and the forever young, right? The boomers want to stay young forever, try to look young forever. Hence the all the replacements, right? The hip replacements, knee replacements, facelifts, boob lifts, the whole thing, right? Staying forever young. Technology is used because we can do more work. Good. Then on to Gen X, right? The Gen X was what's the Persian Gulf War? That was their generation, and AIDS became very prevalent, and it was such a crisis. And they saw the first of the corporate rifts, right? The reduction in forces and cuts. Divorce rate tripled. They were the latchkey kids, right? The boomers were working. Both mom and dad were working, so they're the latchkey kids. PCs, internet, video games, all of that. MTV came to be in Gen X's life experience. Work-life balance. Gen X they could see what's going on with the boomers. Now they're seeing their boomer folks saying, having heart attacks and just stress on the job. And by the way, then they get cut, right? You've given everything to the company, and now you just get risked. And Gen X said, nope. We want some work-life balance. And by the way, we want a lot of autonomy too. We have some own ideas on how to do this, way better than you guys, boomers, that have seemed to do with like working to death. And technology was really, they view it as a way to have some life balance, right? To be able to work remote and balance, not compartmentalize life so much. Then you have Gen Y and certainly 9/11, right? Isn't this interesting? Think about this, Gen Z. The Gen Z were not alive when 9/11 happened. That's weird to think about, isn't it? Because we use that as such a reference point. So Gen Y, 9/11 happened, Afghanistan and Iraq, the Columbine tragedy, where personal terrorism, right? Terrorism became personal, not just something that happened on the TV. It's personal. It happened in this country, in their lifetime. Cell phones, texting, right? The thumb generation, Gen Y, millennials, echo generation, thumb generation, right? They're called all of those. But the laptops, iPods, all the whole personal mobility with technology. But they were very nurtured and protected. Thank you, baby boomer parents, right? They grew up working on teams. Everybody wins, it's the game and everybody gets a trophy. We all win. We don't want to have winners, losers, right? That's proving to be an issue in the office. But the technology is fully integrated into their life. And, I mentioned, like, proving to be an issue. A couple years back, Time and Fortune both did cover articles. The Time article was written to the boomers, and it said, okay, boomers, you raised them, now manage them for the millennials. Like, okay, all this whole no losers, no winners, no losers, everybody wins. That's not working so great when you get into corporate America because it is competitive. And so it's kind of a dichotomy there. So some of the additional details with the builders, and I won't read all these things, but the builders, right? Hard work, disciplined, excellent interpersonal skills, conformity, very patient, often reserved. The boomers really defined by their job and expect loyalty, right, from coworkers because your job's the whole thing. Success is largely visible, right? Trophies, plaques, lifestyle, right? Who has the most toys wins, right? With the whole boomers. And then you have Gen X. Again, the work-life balance is not negotiable. And so, in fact, you might call it you have a crisis at work, and I know Gen X. You call the Gen X. Hey, I know that you have a family trip planned to Disneyland, but we got to do this other couple rounds of testing to make the project deadline. They're like, no, I committed to my family. We're going. Where the boomers would make the call. Oh, sorry, honey. I know we've been planning on this for a while, but we're just going to have to go a different weekend, right? You have very different. And thank you very much, Gen X, for bringing some sense I think that's a huge thing that the Gen Xers have brought in, that it's not all about work and to want some work-life balance. They reject the whole work-driven, all work of the boomers. They guard the personal time. They look for people to invest in, not necessarily loyalty to a company, because they've seen what companies are doing, right, with these risks and how their folks got out of a job after giving so much. Then Gen Y, right? They expect to change jobs frequently and easily bored, and a lot of this is because the average age of leaving home is 26 to 28, right? You have a lot of padding. If you're not having to be responsible for a rent or a mortgage, yeah, you can change jobs. You're not going to be out on the street, right? And so there's some financial reasons underneath that. The boomers are enabling that kind of latitude from the Gen Ys, right? They either still live at home or they come back home and live at home. Still on their folks' insurance. You find a lot of that at work. Accustomed to getting what they want, because the doting and the baby boomer parents definitely want attention. Hey, Mom, look at me. Hey, Mom, look at me, right, when they're young. But that's also going on in adult life now with Facebook, and that's where so much of the validation comes in, is the social media, right, on this attention. They do tend to relate much better to boomers than Gen Xers. There's some conflict there with Gen X, and looking for the job that, to Gen Y, you can do whatever, you can fill in the blanks, right? Makes you happy. And that's how a lot of, the Gen Y's traits. We'll look just a little bit about this, the leadership, right? Builders by hierarchy. Gen Y, teens, really by teens. The work-life balance, right? They need, Gen X absolutely wants work-life balance. Y does as well, but to also balance activities. Their outlook. Boomers, very optimistic. Gen X, kind of skeptical. Gen Y, hopeful. So there's some difference in the characteristics, even in outlooks as well. And again, I won't read these whole charts to you, and you'll certainly have access to the slides. But they tend to hold true. A couple of the leadership gurus, Lance Serkatan is one of my favorites, and he talks about, it's too bad. We need to spend as much time as we do on our metrics. We need to spend that time inspiring people, and really, he makes the observation that senior leaders have so little thinking time and virtually no time for social exchange. No time to get involved in the lives of the teammates, the people who are working on their teams, and that's in direct conflict. So Gen Y, Gen X, and Boomers have no time, right? Those are typically your managers, your leaders. They have no time. They're so pressed with all the demands of the current workday, and yet that's exactly what Gen Y needs: is time, mentoring, guidance. They want time to get to know one another, right? I thought that's kind of interesting. I put this up for one reason. How many legs? How many legs do you see on that elephant? And you don't have to, it's a rhetorical question, but not necessarily a definitive answer, right? And it's all in perspective. Here's a couple of other perspective kind of things, right? IBM, their CEO Tom Watson asked if there was an employee that made a $600,000 mistake, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, are you going to fire him?" It's like, "Are you kidding? I just spent $600,000 training him. Why would I want anyone else to take advantage of that experience?" Right? It's all in the perspective. Rick Warren teaches the moment you stop learning, you stop leading, and that's one of the fundamental core of Gen Y. They've grown up knowing their job is continuous, lifelong learning. Boomers, that wasn't the mix, right? You went to high school, you went to college, got your degree, then you got a job, and that's it. You did your learning. Gen Y have grown up, but they are learning continuously, and that's been a tough thing for the boomers to embrace. Wow, okay, I got to keep learning and keep learning and keep learning, and that's a new kind of a newer concept. Henry Ford says, if you fail, all right, it's an opportunity to begin again, only smarter, right? More intelligently. Tom P is one of my all-time favorites. He talks about homogenous organizations, and if you have everybody who thinks like you, what is that? And he makes the comment, if you want interesting companies, Hire interesting people. Hire the mix of generations. Hire the Gen Z, the millennials. They bring an entirely different perspective. And frankly, look where the buyers are at, right? With the women, the aging baby boomers. There's still a large generation. And you know, where are their efforts going to be next? Or is it on Gen Z? It's interesting. Gen Z, the marketers are making the comment that, you know, they threw out the playbook when the millennials hit the market. Gen Z, they say they aren't even on the same playing field, right? By 2020, Gen Z will account for 40% of all consumers. So definitely going to want to spend some time learning what drives them, what motivates them. Take a look here. What do you think? Are they moving? Are they static? And I'm guessing you're seeing moving objects like I am. And I would tell you, like, hold on, you know that's a flat screen, right? It can't be moving, but it sure looks like they are, doesn't it? And if you take a look here, you see the man's face, the glasses, eyes. But interestingly enough, do you also see a word? If you look at it a little bit differently, do you see the word liar? And those are just kind of some fun games just to remind us it's all in perspective, and things are not always only what you see and what you experience, right, or perceive. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're thinking about how people are approaching things or thinking about things. So again, a little bit about Gen Y, that work is not their life. Boomers, the rewards for the millennials, the Gen Ys need to be continuous. They can be informal. You can send them a text message. And by this, I mean it needs to be like continual. And for things that you probably take for granted, hey, great job of coordinating that meeting. Oh, nice, you did a good job of inviting all the appropriate players for this presentation. So these seem basic to boomers and Gen Xers. They're not basic. And they frankly need coaching in this, and they expect to have feedback and reward when they do something. Oh, you wrote a really, that's a well-written memo. Boy, you got your point across nicely. Go by and talk to them. Having coffee, on your way in, walking in from the parking lot. Take all those time, can be feedback time, and they are looking for it. You know, we talked a little bit about the whole attention, you know, with and sharing so much. They share work experiences, they share salaries, they share risks, all on Facebook or YouTube, Instagram, you know, all the different social channels. You're finding things cropping up. The informality, it comes up in their dress and their preparedness, but it includes job interviews. Look at the recent job interviews you've had. You don't typically see the traditional suits that you used to. People used to give themselves away when they were going for an interview because they were dressed up in a suit, and that's not so much the case. But they have an overwhelming need about thinking of the environment and safety. So if you're hiring and there's a lot of travel in the job, is it international travel? Is it to dangerous places? Personal safety, because remember, personal terrorism has been a part of their world. So personal safety in your jobs and your job environment is a big thing to attracting and retaining Gen Ys. Protecting the environment. They want to know when they're coming to work for your company, what is your company doing to help the environment, to reduce footprint, to help the more global causes that are going on, right, that really matter and affect people. They're incredible multitaskers, and they're comfortable across many, multiple mediums. Phone, IM, chat, text, all the social channels, the apps. And it's not just about the money at all. They need to matter. As a matter of fact, when you show up to a predominantly millennial function or place, like the whole boomer watches with bling, lots of rings, is actually like not cool. Suits, right? I know I go into Silicon Valley, and my suits in many companies are insulting. I had to like totally change my wardrobe. And they certainly have a place in the financials, of course, and in many boardrooms, but that's not always, there's certainly some change underway. The coaching and mentoring, the millennials are absolutely seeking guidance from true experts, and the titles don't really matter. They're really looking for relationships. They want challenges and a chance to matter and add value. Like we talked about the continual feedback and recognition that's needed. They don't respond very well to intimidation. Because I said so, because I'm the boss is not an answer you want to be given to millennials. That you might as well just be speaking a different language. That doesn't resonate at all. The different dress codes, right? So we're going to need to. This is interesting, and I pose a different challenges. Okay, so this is from a boomer and an X, Gen X mindset. Oh, it seems like ladies are wearing some pretty low-cut blouses, and they're getting awful casual with t-shirts, jeans, lots of ink. Kind of looks like a college campus. So will that same dress work in a boardroom? Like, can they go in and support the boardroom? Can they be part of a boardroom conversation? Would you think their casual dress is a career-limiting move? And do you have to teach business dress? And you're going to answer this depending on your own corporate culture and the vertical that you work in. Does it affect their retention? And here's an interesting thing. These are all coming from a Boomer X perspective. Think about the workload as the workforce shifts and Gen Y becomes the majority of the workforce. Will they then set the directive on what the appropriate and acceptable dress code will be? I would imagine yes. So as you know, you're thinking of all the rules. Just remember that there's a power shift going on here by who has the most in the workforce. So there's some things that we can certainly do. Again, I mentioned everybody's an individual. We do belong to different generations, but we're all individuals. So focus on those skills and talents and not necessarily generational differences. Collaboration is key. It is the new X factor, honestly. And how you can leverage that on your teams is going to be, it will make the difference on how effective and high performance your teams are or not. Some good pairings we've found are pairing up the Gen Yers. If you allow them to work in teams and work together, because remember, that's their entire experience. They grew up in school like that, they went to college like that, and worked on teams. And they're comfortable like that. It can actually be pretty intimidating if you give a millennial, a Gen Y, a pretty major task alone. You're going to, Gen X and Boomer manager, if you do that, you will likely find yourself answering a million questions and guidance. And you can save yourself some time and make it more comfortable for them. Let them pair up. It keeps them challenged. They can come with some incredibly rich ideas, and you'll free up all the, every 10 minutes question to you. And listen, as you're watching them work, watch and listen to how they work together. That will give you a lot of clues on how to make the most, right, and keep them productive. Another really effective pairing are the Gen Yers with the Boomers, right? So you don't have the conflict with the X and the Y and competing for the corner office and competing for the next VP title. The Boomers have already been there and we've had our moment in the sun, frankly. It's not like we're just going to go off to the cow pastures just yet, but we've already been the individual contributor superstars. It is our job now to be mentoring and guiding, equipping the next generation to keep these companies going forward, right? And so pair that up because you have the Boomer discipline, experience, analytical skills, business savvy with the Gen Y and the millennial creativity and new ideas, new thinking, and that will produce some pretty impressive results on projects, on presentations, on solving problems. That's a pretty effective pairing there. Start a mentoring program and embrace the shadow training, right? If you have, allow a Gen Yer to, like, even if they're on the team, allow them to kind of shadow. And maybe they have some supporting role kind of parts on your project teams or on your initiatives that they can learn and learn from, like what makes the project run forward? What are all the different pieces? Who teaches them the business savvy things, like do all decisions get made in the boardroom? Absolutely not. They get made on the golf course, in the bathroom, in the workroom, over coffee. But who teaches the Gen Ys that, right? Who teaches in large Fortune 100 firms, when it's business casual day, who teaches the women, executive managers, is that does it means still a jacket. You know, it usually means a jacket. And who teaches the young women executives that? How about when you have social functions at work? Who teaches the Gen Ys? This is not a beer blast. Doesn't mean you can go get blasted. You've got to be in the boardroom the next day with these same people, right? There's things that they just need to be savvy about in business, and you can help teach those. Number 4, if you're letting go of some of the must-dos, and focus on the results, right? You must be at work 5 days a week. You must work from 8 to 5. You must let some of that go. Focus on the results. Maybe they can do the job just fine from Starbucks. Maybe they can do a job fine from home. You know, we fought those battles originally to be able to have the remote working engagements and work arrangements. And so now more than ever, especially with Gen X, Gen Y, those are pretty important. And certainly the technology allows it. So, you know, maybe you don't have to have the standard meetings that you've always had, right? If you can get things done without them, or texting. Does it have to be a formal memo, or does a text suffice? Does an IM chat get the message across, right? Maybe letting go of some of those standard things can help move things forward. We talked about perspective and not only viewing things from your perspective and your bias, but as another generation would perhaps view the situation. Teaching, especially from the millennials, teaching them the why of a job, not just the what, and seeing the big picture and how they fit in is really important. Because then they can get, I get it. I get why you're asking me to do this. That's very important. Be candid and speak frank. Don't take for granted that they know exactly what you mean when you ask them things. Spell it out. I need this project from you by the end of the day at 5 p.m. And I need it because I have to give input to the board on Saturday morning. Right? You need to go ahead and explain it and be very candid with why you need what you need. Match your incentives. So we talked about the savvy just a bit ago, but next one, matching the incentives to each generation's current life needs, right? The boomers are probably pretty interested in healthcare and 401k. Maybe not so much from the millennials, right? Probably aren't thinking of 401k so heavy, a bit, but not like the boomers are. Gen X needs a work-life balance and the flexibility and the family things, right? So tailor your incentives to each generation's life needs. Focus on building relationships, and millennials are still really about the fun. Work is a social place, so you don't want to forget that aspect of it as well. Some things that you might take for granted, Gen Xers and Boomers, these things that we've taken for granted, you just do, these are new and they're very, very valuable to the Wyers, right? These classes, business communication classes, time management classes, how to listen, how to resolve conflict, business acumen classes, delegation, public speaking, how to manage direct reports. They're going to be managing people who are older, no doubt. And how do they do that? They're going to need to know the opposite. Budgeting, resource management, certainly the service management fundamentals, right? ITIL class, the ISO, Agile, DevOps, ITSM Academy is full of them. You know, get your millennials into those courses because they haven't had the experience. They don't have 10, 20, 30 years under their belt of knowing what some of these pieces and components are and what the language is and the terminology. Get them into those courses, right? You got the boomers retiring at $10,000 a day. They're going to need to quickly learn a lot of details. Very team-oriented, collaborative approach, like we've talked about. The written and verbal skills are becoming so important. Collaboration so important. And finally, I'll just call your attention. Leaders are readers, right? Always learning, always engaging your mind. And so, final things on the slide. I've included some of my faves. Generational books, business books. I've always shared these with my teams, but there's the book titles and the authors there, and a whole slew of them. These are some of my very favorites. And then these are quite compelling. I normally show videos in my webinars on generations, but it doesn't seem to work so great over a webinar channel. And so I've included the URLs. I would encourage you. The Gen Y guy is hilarious. 60 minutes on the Gen Y guys. We are Gen Y. These are short clips. They don't take very long. You can show them in a team meeting. Great conversation. But I've included those for you as well. And finally, like Karen said, if you have questions, I'm happy to stay on and answer any questions you might have, give some ideas or suggestions. And I hope this has been worth your time this morning.
Thank you, Brenda. Really a lot for us to reflect upon with our emerging workforces here. So thank you so much for that presentation. And we do have a few questions for you. Anybody else, if you have some questions for Brenda, please chat them in. And I know some of you need to leave the webinar and get back to your work. So just to remind you that our next webinar is scheduled for Thursday, July 16th, when Dennis Esslinger, and Dennis is an independent IDLE evangelist and an IDLE instructor. He's going to be joining us, and Dennis's presentation is titled CSI, How to Get It Going with Little or No Budget. And in this webinar, Dennis will discuss how to get CSI started and accepted into your culture, and you'll learn tips and tricks from making small incremental improvements that go a long way towards your continual service improvement goals. So we're looking forward to Dennis's presentation and hope you join us for that. And my colleague Eric Montijo is here today to share some information with us before we start the Q&A. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Karen. How are you?
I'm well. How are you this morning?
Good, good. Thank you very much. Brenda, I just want to thank you very much for what is now one of my favorite webinars. As a Gen Y, I'm a Gen Y, so the top-down perspective is really enlightening and empowering. I really look forward to referencing it in the future because I will when I speak to future clients or even when I'm talking up to our older managers.
Nice.
So I wanted to take a moment to talk about a factor you talked about, which is guarding personal time. I know summer is a difficult time for training when you're looking at that personal time. You want to spend time with your family and friends, enjoy the great outdoors, and embrace the sunshine. I know I'm absolutely excited to go to the beach this weekend, as I'm sure a lot of you are. However, what if we could get that training and fulfill my organization's need and fulfill my own personal need to go to the beach or suntan or do whatever else I want? Well, the answer to that particular problem is the IDLE Lifecycle course. IDLE Lifecycle courses provide either half days or condensed 3-day classes so that you can go about and enjoy your life afterwards. It's also difficult to get approval for all 5 days of training, right? Well, with Lifecycle classes, it's much easier on the business need, and at the end of the day, you're getting the best IDLE training available. Also, now's the best time to go for a Lifecycle course as we're running our summer school sale, which is buy one, get one free on all Lifecycle courses with the code SUMMERSCHOOL at checkout. The sale goes on until July 31st, so I'd really suggest you to take advantage of it before it goes away. Thanks for giving me a moment to speak, and Brenda, thanks again for the wonderful webinar. Karen, it's back to you.
Thank you, Eric. Boy, that's quite an offer. You can come back every month and give us something, and we like those.
I think I just might.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. So we do have some questions for you.
Okay.
You ready, Brenda? Okay. So Greg has a question. He wants to know, how do you reconcile adding the pictures to make millennials happy with the avoidance of pictures from the boomers?
That's a great question, Craig. Honestly, it is. And it's frankly something that the boomers have kind of had to get over because of what I mentioned, right? There were just things you did and didn't share at work. And private pictures, we were pretty compartmentalized. So it's taken some growth. But if you can do, a good way to start into it is some non-threatening, just kind of some fun. So if you have some work pictures of people in the workplace, I mean, if someone absolutely doesn't want their photo, that's personal, right? And you can respect the personal space. But if maybe try to get people in flattering shots, right? Keep the really gross ones, and we all have them. Try to keep the really awful ones out of the public view, not on team viewing. But if you can get some non-threatening shots with people kind of having fun in the workplace, active, maybe you're launching an event, you want those pictures, that's usually a great way to start, because most people like to feel like they were included, and that that they were contributing. And if that shows up and is reflected in pictures, it's a good way to kind of start bridging that gap and to say, okay, we are going to start using some visuals and some pictures, and it's fun, right? Not every picture is, they're not meant to be glamour headshots. They're fun pictures, but they help relating one to another. So I'm hoping that was kind of where you were going with that, Greg, and maybe that gave you a suggestion or an idea to try.
And you know, Brenda, I mean, also because there are a lot of people that are working remotely, so it really does kind of help to, you know, share something that's a bit, you know, non-business-like with people to kind of, you know, so you get to understand them better.
Well, it does. You know, you saw, like, we love animals, and we lost 2 kitties here recently. And when I was telling my team, because we all work remote, and so when I was sharing, I can say we lost 2 of our kitties, and it was devastating to us, but it also helped them kind of feel, like, have empathy or feel what I was feeling when I sent them the pictures of the 2 kitties. Like, oh, I see little Sabrina, I see Dusty, and they knew who they were, right? And so you're absolutely right. It does add, especially for a remote workforce, it helps connect, it helps understand someone's, or funny thing, right? If you're showing something funny, a picture kind of brings some levity as well.
Exactly. Scott has a question. It's kind of a rhetorical question, but because you have really done a lot of research and work on this entire subject, and certainly know more than any of us, I'm assuming, because you certainly know more than I do, certainly. So he's just asking, what do you think will happen after Generation Z? Any thoughts on that?
On the next what's coming up, I'll tell you, Scott, it's really interesting, and it takes a little while. Like, you can't, as you can see, generations are the product of the world and life experiences going on around them, and so you can't forecast what. I mean, who could have forecasted 9/11 or Columbine? And we would never have wanted to, of course. But we don't know what the next generation is going to live through and what their life will, you know, what some of those experiences will be. So, truthfully, Gen Z, they're just like in the last, really, I mean, even as recent as last year, there were like contests to name what is this next generation after the millennials. What should we call them? You know, it's illogical to say Gen Z, all right, and now we're out of the alphabet, so I'm guessing we'll be going away from that. You know, like they name the hurricanes the ladies' names of the alphabet, and so, you know, there's obviously no other letter in the alphabet, but they're also like boomers, right? That's not an alphabet name. That's those. I suspect it'll be characteristics. So just like Gen Z, and whether it's going to be Gen Z that sticks or the iGen is gaining in popularity, and in fact, it might just take that name as we see over the next 5-10 years, that might settle in and that be their generational name. It's called the iGen, but that's still settling, and so the one after that, we'll kind of have to see what theirs is made of, right? What are the things going to influence and experience their world that I'm sure that will probably dictate what their name will be. Kind of like the Gen Y, right? That at first their name was the thumb generation because of all the texting, right? Millennials, thumb generation, Gen Y. And so the Y or the millennials have kind of stuck.
All right, thank you. Elias has a question. He's asking, how do you define those at the borders, 1 to 3 years, who join new or to go away from the previous category? So he's saying, like, if they're 34 to 37 or if they're 50 to 53, how do you define those borders?
Yeah, you know, it's really. I was actually having this conversation with my boss yesterday, and we were both sharing that, especially those on the fringe, usually have strong characteristic and traits of both because they are, you know, they are the border, and there's usually a richness in that, and it's actually often to your advantage if you're on the cusp of one of the generations. And because of this, right, so you still have, for example, you mentioned 37, right, so they still have a lot of that at that age would absolutely still probably be very technically savvy, right, all over the apps, quick adopter, early adopter, quick to learn anything new technology-wise, but having more of the business savvy of the boomer, right, that you've been in the workplace a bit longer, You've seen hierarchies, you've seen business culture, you've seen how business works and how things get done, how things resonate or don't with leadership. So that really is an advantage and an advantageous position to be in the cusp like that, where you're showing traits of both generations. And like this, remember, overall, like we're none of us, while we belong to generation, it doesn't completely define us. So you can surely have some fun, and you certainly have a lot of people in common that you know that you have shared experiences with. But everybody is an individual as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so we were talking about the dominant traits, but certainly they cross over. You and I were having a conversation this morning as, you know, I'm a baby boomer, but I certainly embrace a lot of the Gen X and the Gen Y and what they're looking for as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of comments for you, Brenda, that said, great information. Thank you so much. Lots of food for thought. Hadn't really thought about this, so thank you for sharing that. And Jenny Jenny had a comment as well. And Jenny said, we're dealing with millennials who expect to be in management after a year, thanks to everybody gets a trophy philosophy. And she made a smiley in there.
Yeah, you know, the whole you know, the standard connotations. Entitlement is certainly, it's not a secret, and it's quite widely talked about with the Gen Ys. But you have to teach them the ropes, and that's often why there's such conflict with Gen X, Gen Y, right? You have Gen Y coming, okay, well, I've been here. You know, when's the VP title coming in the corner office? And Gen X is saying, hold on, pal. You got to work some of the crappy jobs, the crappy shifts, the tough assignments too for a decade or so. You don't just march right in here. There's things, you know, there's things you need to get under your belt. And so we do find that there is conflict between Gen X, Gen Y, and in fact it's the boomers then often that are the guides, the mentors, the peacemakers, and teaching some savvy, like the respect for the things that Gen X has gone through and learned, and teaching the Gen Y on how to get there, right? The ropes to get there, the jobs to take, the horizontal moves to make, the vertical moves to make, to help them increase in their knowledge and experience and help equip and prepare them to take on the things of those tougher VP jobs and, you know, some of the more span of responsibility wisely. So, yeah, certainly it's very real. I would encourage all of us to watch our language, right? We're all professionals, all of us working on the same team. So you want to kind of steer away from saying, I don't know, ask the kids. No, those kids are professionals on your team and equals. Right? They happen to be the millennials or the Gen Ys. Watch that. And for the Gen Yers, you know, probably not a great idea to say, you know, the old farts are going to be a little bit slower to the meeting. Right? That doesn't resonate so well either. And so watch our language, that it's very honoring across generations, and recognize that we all are professionals, and really at the end of the day working for the same end goals and results.
Well, and I think it was clear in the presentation, at the end of the day, it's about respect for each other and teaming together and collaborating together to get the best out of everybody.
You bet. You bet. And like we mentioned, we have precedents doing with men and women in the workplace, with the different cultures in the workplace, and now we have the different ages. And it is all about respect and honoring the skills and ideas of the person, right? Regardless of what other label that they're carrying.
Exactly. I have one more question for you, and it's from Elias. And the question is, which category behavior is more reflected?
Oh, I'm missing the question, Elias.
I think you're asking is more reflective, or it says which category behavior is more reflected. And reflected in what, Elias? Can you actually chat in a little bit more to give us some clarification on that?
Karen, Brenda, hi, it's Lisa. The way I'm reading that, and I could be wrong, is the most predominant throughout all of the categories. Is that it, Elias? Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. So what's the common denominator, I think?
Through all the different, you mean across all the different generations?
Mm-hmm.
Well, certain collaboration. I mean, if you had to say the whole reason we're even talking about this is to say how do we effectively collaborate with one another, irrespective and acknowledging the differences, right? So even with all the differences and the different approaches and our different experience levels and our different experience level in life and in the world, with all of that, still the whole goal is to bring individuals and with those, right, because there's good things that come out of those too. Wires bring so much to the table with all the new technology and things that can be done and the possibilities, new ways of thinking. That there's such a richness in that. Yet the boomers bringing a lot of analytics to the table, a lot of experience, a lot of road warrior experience, and Gen X very pragmatic, not Pollyanna, very pragmatic on what. So you have all those different viewpoints coming into the workplace, and if you can get the mix, the beauty of all those with everybody's best ideas, right? We win, right? The teams win, your companies win.
Well, and Brenda, Lisa again.
If I am not quite clear on, okay.
No, I think, well, I think I got it. But I wanted to say one of the things that you'd said very early on in the presentation that really, really struck home for me was that, there have been generational waves of cultural diversity training. And, as you pointed out, it's as different ethnic groups came into the workplace, there was a requirement for that type of training. As women came into the workplace, particularly in leadership roles, there was a lot of training that needed to be education on how to work together and what was acceptable behavior. And I never correlated that until you said it today. So that was one of my huge takeaways is you're right. This is the cultural diversity that we need to educate and train to now. And I think that says, I think that says a lot about where we've come as a nation, as a workplace, as a, that's our cultural difference now is age. And so that really made me very happy. And then I know that Eric was joking when he said something about the old folks that he works with. But it's toward the end you said, and it's because I know Eric and his sense of humor, but toward the end, something else that really stuck with me is, you know what, we do have a tendency to call them the kids. And that's not fair because I don't want them calling us the old ones. So I'm going to stop that from my vocabulary today. So I personally thank you very much for that.
Lisa, you're very welcome, and you are so right. As I mentioned, one of my big goals was at least to promote awareness, so that we at least it's a thing, right? It's a thing that we acknowledge it, that we embrace it, that we give it some thought and do some thoughtful thing, like, oh yeah, I don't want to be saying the kid or the old farts, or I want to honor the different. I want to remember. Oh, with incentives, we have great incentives. We're going to increase your eye care. Like, great. Yeah, like, okay, you need to make the incentives match. We're going to increase the tuition reimbursement, right? That's going to be very appealing to a Gen Y. Maybe it'll be sort of appealing to a boomer, but right they're now towards the end. And so matching incentives, like, so on all the things that you do, you're thinking about it from the different generations. And what would matter and make the most, make them be the most meaningful to them. But with regard to training, there are most of the Fortune 500 companies have some kind. They're either half-day sessions or they do presentations or have some pamphlets. They're at least starting to talk about it. Some of them are having formal training. They've had coaches come in, do special sessions to at least start bridging these gaps, right? Start helping the generations work effectively and productively together. So there you go, Lisa. There's some more ideas for maybe some cool training courses.
Right. All right, Karen, we'll take it back to you. Is that the end of your formal questions?
It is the end of my formal questions. I just wanted to say Elias really appreciated your presentation and really thought it was very interactive, and thank you for all the efforts to get his question answered for him. So thank you for that, Elias. And again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today and remind you all that our next webinar is scheduled for Thursday, July 16th, when Dennis Esslinger, an independent IDLE evangelist and IDLE instructor, is going to join us. And Dennis's presentation is titled CSI, How to Get it going with little or no budget. So in this webinar, Dennis is going to discuss how to get CSI started and accepted into your culture. We'll learn tips and tricks for making small incremental improvements that go a long way towards your continual service improvement goals. So we look forward to having you join us. And now most of you have registered or requested pre-registration for the next webinar, and so you will receive a confirmation by email. For those of you that haven't requested pre-registration, we'll send you an invitation. As you log out, please take a minute to complete the post-webinar survey. Your feedback is very important to us as part of our continual service improvement process. And we thank you again for joining us, and we thank you, Brenda, for presenting for us today. It was a great presentation.
And I'd like very welcome. My pleasure.
Yes, thank you, Brenda. It was great. It really was great. So thank you we appreciate your time today. And I'd like everybody to have a wonderful day.